Okay, I'd like to call to order the Design Review Board meeting for June 9th, 2022, City of Gig Harbor. And we'll start with a roll call of the DRB members, myself, Darren Filan, and then I'll call you out and then you can say here. How about that? So John?
Yep.
And Larry?
Here.
Marlene?
Here.
Okay, and then staff, you introduce yourself, I guess.
Jeremy Hammer, Associate Planner, City of Gig Harbor.
And Cindy Andrews, Planning Technician, City of Gig Harbor.
Okay, is that it? I think we have obviously the applicant here, so we'll let them introduce themselves when we introduce the project. Okay, so first order of business, I think we had some meeting minutes from the last time to get approved. They're pretty brief. So let me double check here. That was from, oh my goodness. Is this truly the last time we met, December 9th? Oh, the meeting was February 24th. That was approval of the first one. So yes, that still was a while ago. I think the only members in attendance were myself, Larry, and Marlene. So Larry, Marlene, you have any comments on the minutes as written?
No comments. I move we accept the minutes as written.
Okay. Marlene, you want to second that? You're muted, Marlene.
Thought I had unmuted long enough. Second.
Okay. Okay, no further discussion. We'll call for the question. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes as written?
Aye.
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 Okay, so approved. Okay, so get those out of here. So now we.
Darren, if I can interrupt for a minute, Amy and Brianne are your two newest members on the Design Review Board. I think Michelle probably would have brought them on and introduced them, but I think Michelle's off this week. But
Well, let's my apologies for that.
Yeah.
I think we've been a little bit out of the loop. So let's take a pause moment and then make introductions and move on with that. So my apologies. Why don't we start with Amy?
Present. Hi.
Okay, welcome aboard, Amy.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
And then is it Brianne?
Brianne, yep. I am also here. Nice to see everyone.
Okay, welcome. Okay, so does that fill our, I'm asking of city staff, does that fill our last two vacant positions?
I believe you are at full staff now. It looks like you have everyone here except for Linda, who I'm not sure if she attends every meeting because she fills that role as a historic preservation officer.
Right.
But you should be at full capacity now.
Okay, and John, you're still in that role, right? You and Linda.
Yep, that is correct. I am the second one.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. Get back to our. I just closed down what our agenda was. I think we had some other staff items here. Let me open this back up. Unless Cindy wants to share her screen and we can get the agenda up. And we have a couple of items that I think Jeremy was going to update us on a few things, and then sounded like we have to get some elections out of the way.
Let me go ahead and share my screen and see if we can get that real quick. Here you go.
Okay.
And right there. Are we seeing that? Look. Are we seeing that?
Yes, there we go.
Okay.
So it looked like we want to go ahead. Why don't we just jump to either chair elections or update from Josh. And then I think I would read the announcement of the public application, and then or the announcement of the application and the public meeting announcement, and then we move into the applicant. Would that be all right with everyone?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so Josh, you want to give us your update?
Sure. Yeah, let me see. Cindy, I'm going to try to steal the screen share from you if it lets me here. 1 second.
If I stop sharing, would that give you that ability?
I think I've got it here.
Okay.
All right. So
Yep, yep.
is that coming through okay?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so I don't get to visit with the design review board very often. I'm not sure if I've ever really officially attended one of your meetings before. But I am here today because the city council and their meeting in April, their last meeting in April, adopted new guidelines and procedures for the way that council conducts its business and the way that the city does certain activities. And one of the things that they adopted this time around was a new policy on how advisory boards, commissions, and committees are organized and kind of the expectations around those groups. A lot of this is going to be just really redundant to you, stuff that you already know, stuff that you've already been practicing as a board. But council wanted to get it kind of formalized and uniform for all the different advisory boards around the city. We use the term advisory boards just to represent any board, committee, commission of volunteers. So the design review board is one of those. There's a list of all 7 of the standing ones in this section of their guidelines. Each advisory board that's a standing advisory board like the DRB is established in the Gig Harbor Municipal Code, and that's where you'll find your charter, basically your scope of duties, what your obligations are. So that is section 5.3 that talks about how your scope of work is defined. So anytime we want to refer to, what is the design review board supposed to be doing? What is their stated purpose? We just go back to the municipal code where it's defined. The design review board, I guess, is a little unique because you guys only meet when you have something in front of you to discuss for the most part. So I guess that's probably why it's been a few months since your last meeting. I'm just going to go through this. If there's any questions at all, just go ahead and interrupt me. If I'm going over something and you're not quite sure what it means or you need clarification, just let me know. Section 5.4 talks about the residency requirements. This applies to the design review board. Basically, to be on the DRB, member needs to live within Pierce County, somewhere between the Tacoma Narrows Bridge and the Purdy Bridge. So I'm pretty sure all of you meet that requirement. So that is shouldn't be anything new to this group. The appointment process, I think you've all gone through the appointment process where we bring you in and sit you down in front of 3 council members and various staff and sometimes the board chair. There used to be an official city council committee that did that. Council dissolved all of their standing committees. So now when we do that, we're just gonna have an ad hoc committee of 3 council members. So it'll be different council members each time we do interviews. But the process will be pretty much the same. So when you go up for renewal or we bring on somebody else, they'll do the same. That really brief 15-minute kind of informal interview, question and answer session with council. Appointment terms are for 3 years. I think all of you are serving 3-year terms right now. There may be a couple of you that are holdovers from back when we used to have 4-year terms, but now that's been pretty much uniformly set at 3 years for everyone. So that should be the standard going forward for your group. If for some reason your term is scheduled to end, you decide you don't want to reapply for another extension to that term, we do have a provision in here that you can keep serving past your expiration date until someone is appointed to your position. So if you've served your 3 years and you're ready to move on, but we haven't quite found a replacement, we may offer to see if you want to stay on for a few more months till we can get that filled. This just says that that option is available if we need to use it. Vacancies, this just provides for the city council to fill vacancies in case someone needs to drop off unexpectedly. The other thing that it provides for that's maybe a little bit new to the DRB, well, pretty much to all of our boards, is that it allows the mayor to remove someone from the design review board if we find that there's been like a violation of our policies or a violation of the municipal code, something probably fairly extreme that needs to be addressed, the mayor can step in and administratively remove someone from a committee. I really don't anticipate that's ever going to be an issue, but we've just added that in here in case it does come up down the road. Section 5.8 just goes over the general expectations for advisory board members. This is kind of mostly about just attendance, making sure that you are able to make the meetings, making sure that you're engaged and contributing, that you're working as a team, working with each other cooperatively. These are just kind of general expectations that I don't think we're ever going to have any issue with most of our committees. So Section 5.9, this kind of defines what a chair, the role of the chair. Each committee can elect a chair and a vice chair, which you've done, and I think you're going to do this meeting as well. So the chair's primary responsibility is just to work with the staff liaison and make sure the agenda is set, make sure everything's ready to go for the meetings, preside over the meeting, make sure that all of the discussion and debate is handled correctly. And then the vice chair just steps in for the chair whenever the chair is absent. For transacting business, we have the section in here on quorums. A quorum of the design review board is going to be a majority of the appointed members. So the question comes up occasionally when we have vacancies. It's like the DRB has 7 members and occasionally we'll have some vacancies, so we may be down to 5 members. If that ever happens, a quorum is the majority of whoever's appointed. So we don't have to have a quorum of 7 if there's only 5 members. We could just have a quorum of 5 and we can still conduct our business. Conflicts of interest, this may come up from time to time with the design review board. If there's something that creates an appearance of fairness problem, or you have a vested interest in a project, then you would need to disqualify yourself from participating in that discussion. Section 5.12 talks about liaisons and representatives. So every board is going to have a designated liaison, a staff person that will be your primary contact. For the design review board, I'm not sure who that is. I don't know, Cindy, if that's your role to be their contact.
Yes, that is my role.
Okay. So any issues you have with attendance, if you need to be excused from a meeting, anything like that should go through your staff contact person. If you need to contact the chair of the board or you need to have any kind of formal communication, you should do that through your staff contact. And then that person will be responsible for relaying any decisions that you make and any official correspondence to staff and council. So that will be their role. Section 513 just says that the first part here says that we use Robert's Rules of Order to kind of conduct our business. I like to stress that Robert's Rules of Order is not the final rule of law for the way we do our business. It's a great model to follow, but we shouldn't let Robert's rules get in the way of us actually conducting the business that we need to do. So if Robert's rule seems to be too complicated and you're trying to make motions and amended motions, the idea is to just get to the point of what you want to get to. And if Robert's gets in the way, then it's okay to deviate from that. 514 says each board can establish their own regular meeting times. So the design review board has that set as the the first and third Thursday of each month at 5 o'clock p.m. So that is up to each board to establish. That's the schedule that the DRB has. That's up to the DRB to change. Special meetings may be called with the permission of the mayor. Subcommittee meetings can also be called with permission of the mayor. I don't know that the DRB has ever used subcommittees for anything, but if that comes up, that's an option to use.
Can I interrupt a second? Are you saying that the boards can actually set the schedule for their meetings?
Yes, that is, the boards are the ones that actually have the authority to do that. So if the design review board as a body decides that this time is not convenient for them, if they need to find a different time that works better, it's up to each body to do that. That needs to be done in consultation with staff, of course, because we'll have to make sure we can provide staff support. But If you find that the times just aren't working, then we can work with that.
Okay,
I think the DRB time has been established for quite a long time. I don't remember the last time it was changed, but
well, it was changed to 5 o'clock when the current staff were kind of furloughed and hours were reduced a bit to reduce staff time, for additional hours beyond, say, 5 o'clock. So we moved the meeting time from a traditional start time of 6 p.m. to 5 p.m. to assist with that. So, so it hasn't been all that long. We've been at 5 p.m.
oh, okay. Yeah, there's some flexibility in that. It needs to be, when you set your meeting time, it needs to be with the support of staff. So that's probably a discussion to have probably with Katrina or Carl when you can get them to one of your meetings, if you want to talk about that. Because they will be the ones that will be controlling, they'll be in charge of assigning staff and making sure staff time is available. So. Section 516, this is about communications with the city council. I don't think this one will come up too often with the design review board, but this section basically is saying that you shouldn't be consulting with council members on the decisions that you make here, and council members should not be coming to you to influence your decisions that you make. So you're a separate body from the city council. You should be operating without their input, and they should not be expecting you to come to them for their input. So I don't think that's an issue with the design review board typically. Section 517, communications with the public. This section, this is basically just trying to say that you should not represent yourselves officially as design review board members to the public. So I don't know how all this would come up as a design review board member, but you shouldn't be going out and saying, I'm on the design review board and you shouldn't be doing this, or you should be doing this. You just don't take your position on the board as a point of authority when you're dealing with the public. Communication with other advisory board members. This probably came up when you took your Open Public Meetings Act training, for those of you that have had that. But essentially, this is just saying don't be communicating with each other on the applications that you're reviewing. Your discussions should be conducted in an open meeting. So if you have comments, concerns, things you want to address about the applications you're reviewing, it should occur during the meeting and not behind the scenes with each other. And almost to the end here, lobbying efforts. You as design review board members should not be lobbying the legislature on any kinds of activities unless you're specifically directed to do so by staff or council. That one probably won't come up either. And then the last one is reimbursement of expenses. So if for some reason you have any kind of expenses for travel or training or anything like that may come up, just make sure that's authorized in advance. And that is about the extent of it.
Okay, thank you. Do any board members have any questions?
Yeah, well, thank you for giving me a few minutes to come and just run that over. I just want to make sure that all of our boards are aware that that's out there now, and just get that in front of you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I believe then before we get on to the application, there is a process of elections for us. And where we currently sit, I think the position of chair is vacant. Brett Marla DeSantis had that position most recently. And I think the position of vice chair, I think, was held by myself. So everything is open. We haven't had an election in a while. So the way this works is we'd have a member of the DRB make motion and recommendations, nominate someone for these two positions. You heard Josh go through it. It's basically the chair will sort of administer or can preside over the meetings. It's pretty straightforward. It's not too complicated. You don't have to be afraid about the process. It takes a little bit to kind of get used to it, but it is pretty repetitive. And you always have the support of the city staff moving through this. You will be in essence, the signature on any recommendations that the board makes officially, although it really just means that you're just representing the board as a whole and putting your name on our recommendations. And then the vice chair would serve that role if the chair, for whatever reason, can't attend a meeting. So do we have any recommendations or nominations for chair or vice chair?
Darren, I'd love to nominate you. You do a great job off of it and for primary chair. And I'd like to throw my hat in for vice chair.
Okay.
I'll
Thank you,
jump
John.
in real quick on this.
Sure.
So myself and Carl DeSimas were talking about this earlier, and the DRB bylaws indicate that the nomination of elected officers shall be made at the first regular meeting of August.
Oh.
So I believe this has to
Okay.
wait until then, since it's a 1-year appointment. We would want to stick to that so that we basically keep up that timeline.
So Jeremy, what do we do in the case of that, since we have a vacancy right now, since Brett's no longer here?
So in the case of that, the bylaws regarding vice chairman, it states that chairman shall assume the duties and powers of the chairman in the chairman's absence.
Okay.
And then along with that, if the chairman and vice chairman are absent, the DRB may by a majority vote elect a temporary chairman.
Okay.
So Darren, it's you then.
All right. Well, since it was on the meeting agenda, what we can do is we can defer to our bylaws to August, scratch it from the agenda. We'll pick it back up. Now, I would say that even if we don't have a scheduled applicant, we should have a meeting then for that first Tuesday or Thursday, or what is it, second? Yeah, first and third, right, is when we meet of August, so we can actually vote on that. So just be mindful that we at least schedule a meeting for that, and maybe any other business that we want to conduct, if you don't have an applicant. We haven't met in so long, I feel like you almost want to take advantage of the opportunity. But we can defer. Everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
Fine.
Okay, so let's see here. I got to get back to my, let me grab my downloads here. Got to get my agenda here back up again. Okay. Okay. Okay, so again, this is, we have one application this evening. And this is, I think it's called the Names Residence. Jeannie Gagliano is here to present with that. I don't know if we have also representative of the ownership group. Jeannie, is it just you, or who else is?
It's me and Brandon. The owner is taking her daughter, from hither to yon and is in traffic, so she wasn't able to make it.
Okay,
But
so
Brandon Swan is from my office.
okay, so with that, this is an open public meeting announcement. We basically would allow, if we had any city or members of the public that wanted to make a comment, we would have an opportunity for them to make comment. I don't think we do currently, looking at the people that are within the meeting. But we will ask the DRB members, basically, if you've had any ex parte communication regarding this application. Anyone? You can just shake your head if you want to stay on mute. Okay, with there being none, I think the DRB members, no reason to recuse themselves from discussion or voting on this matter. And then Jeannie, since you and Brandon are the only ones representing the ownership group, do you have any reason to suggest or to recuse any DRB member from voting on this application?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so with that said, we'll go ahead and introduce the project, Names Residence. This is some siding and windows application for bringing some non-permitted work on an existing building into compliance. So it's pretty simple, located at 3404 Ross Avenue. So it's in the downtown area just above El Poblito's restaurant in a little residential district. So I will turn it over to staff for the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, DRB. We are here tonight for your consideration of a design alternative proposed by the Names Residence, a single-family residence located at 3404 Ross Avenue. The site, as is developed in its existing state, is not encumbered by steep slopes, critical areas, or significant vegetation. The subject parcel is located in the city's R1 single-family zoning district and is surrounded on all sides with R1 zoning. Tonight's meeting has been appropriately noticed to the public and no comments were provided in response to the notice. Brief description of the proposal. The existing front facade of the residence was remodeled in 2019 under a prior owner without design review approval. The work included a new configuration of windows, new exterior siding. This proposal is to bring that into compliance. A design alternative is being proposed as the new window configuration does not comply with the solid void requirements listed in Gig Harbor Municipal Code 1799-530B. As such, the applicant is proposing an alternative to this design manual provision this evening. 1799-530B states that generally windows and doors shall constitute 25 to 30% of the prominent facade wall planes. Situations where this is not practical, masonry facade described in GHC 1799-420 could be utilized. As I noted in the staff report, that section notes that the option may not be used. That section may be used on facades facing and within 50 feet of the street wide right of way, providing access to the site. And the facade in question for this proposal is located within 50 feet of the street right of way, and thus that cannot be applied. The additional design elements that were mentioned in exhibits A and B by the applicant regarding trim and window design were reviewed by staff and determined to meet the design standards prescriptively, and thus may not be approved, may be approved administratively. So I know in their reports they listed there are 3 different elements that they were listing for consideration. We will only be looking at one of them here tonight. See where I was here. As an alternative to this design standard, the applicant is proposing the addition of a stone block planter at the base of the facade, which is depicted in attachment B to the staff report. The proposed planter box will measure 19 feet across the facade and 1 foot in height. Staff has included a street view of the front facade prior to the work being done. And this is from prior to 2019. That's as exhibit C. As noted in exhibit A, the applicant states that the addition of the stone planter in addition to windows and trim would be a superior design solution than just windows and siding alone. Staff believes the proposed alternative design is consistent with the criteria for approval that the board will be considering this evening, based on the proposal complementing the existing character of the surrounding neighborhood where it is located. Additionally, staff believes that the proposal constitutes an improvement over what existed prior to the reconfiguration. Should the board agree with the analysis described in section 6 of the staff report, staff has prepared suggested findings and recommendations for the board to consider adopting this evening, which recommend approval of the requested alternative design review. This concludes my synopsis of the Names Residence Alternative Design Review. I'm happy to address any questions prior to the applicant's presentation as needed.
Okay, do any members of the DRB have any questions of Jeremy?
None.
No? Okay. So Jeremy, just so we can maybe get the numbers right here.
Sure.
So the previous design, which was the masonry facade with the larger windows, was remodeled, and the entirety of the house was re-sided. It's got a new shingle sort of siding with what would we consider to be a traditional, Millville kind of window design and casings. But the percentages are not as large as they need to be in regards to ratios to the facade. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the planter, did I read somewhere where the, again, trying to use the masonry exception in addition to this, is the planter trying to satisfy that? And is it appropriate? You've mentioned within the 50 feet. We couldn't necessarily use that as an exception. So
Yeah, I'll let the applicants and kind of go into that farther, but I was working under the assumption they were trying to utilize that section. That section also mentions that I think 80% of the facade would need to be masonry in that case. So I think what they were going for was ultimately just the intent of that section, kind of going along with that.
Okay. Okay. Well, if no other DRB members have any questions of Jeremy at this point, we could turn it over to Jeannie and Brandon to give us a presentation on their design solution.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead,
Okay.
Jeannie.
All right, thank you. Brandon's gonna have a PowerPoint. Could he share the screen? Or how does that work?
Cindy will probably have to allow that.
Actually, there should be at the bottom of his screen, a green share screen button.
Yep.
And he can just go ahead and push that.
I see it, so I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing now.
Perfect.
Okay, I won't get into the PowerPoint yet, but I just wanted something on the screen that you could look at. So hello, thank you for meeting with us today. I am working with Kapiolani, her name's Kappy Names, to resolve this window issue. It's a violation issue that was created by a previous owner of the house. Kappy gave me a letter to read to you since she couldn't be here today. It also was emailed, I think, to Michelle and Jeremy, so hopefully it's part of the record. Says, to whom it may concern, good evening, DRB. My name is Kappy Names. My grandparents have lived on Henderson Bay since the 60s. I grew up with a love of Gig Harbor. We frequently drove our little boat from Henderson Bay to Gig Harbor in the summer months. Now that our families have grown, I decided to find my own special home to retire in. I have enjoyed the Millville area, farmers market, shops, restaurants, and of course, the beautiful Gig Harbor waterfront and activities. I love being able to walk anywhere from my home. My hope is that you will approve the design to my home on 3404 Ross Avenue. I'm excited to make these improvements and to move forward. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Kapiolani, Kappy Names. A little bit of history. Jeremy touched on it. The house was built around 1976, well before the city's design manual was codified, and well after the 1950s Millville homes that the historic district section of the manual refers to as the desired style of home in that neighborhood, including on Ross Avenue. In 2019, the previous owner replaced the front windows and exterior siding on the main house structure, which is what you see here. These changes were flagged as a code violation. In December of 2020, Kapiolani Names, the current owner, purchased the property, and it's been left to her to resolve this outstanding violation. So that is why we're here today. Then, so going forward on to our PowerPoint here, we have a site plan with the existing home, and there's that carport. The Ross Avenue is to the right there, and it's the front facade that we're talking about is 40 feet from Ross's pavement, and it's 25 feet from the front property line. And then here you can see view one is from up above there. It's basically blocked by the carport. And then view two is if you're standing directly in front looking at the home. And view three is kind of a perspective view from the side. All right, so then going on. So we are seeking design review board recommendation of approval for a superior design solution for the following sections of the design manual. I'm happy to hear that we're only talking about solid and void, but I wasn't sure. It wasn't clear in talking to the city exactly what the violation was. So I kind of did my best to figure it out. So, and then you can see what our proposed solution is going to be a 1 foot tall by 19 foot planter in front. We have a window detail to show you the existing installed windows. And then the dashed line is, if you're looking straight on, how much overlap there is of the carport to the front facade. My point being is that if you considered the carport in front of it, you would be over the 25% of what is directly in front. But you can see the front facade from an angle too. So I didn't calculate that, but I just want to make that point. All right, so just in the next slide, Brandon. Yeah, okay, so conforming to solid void ratio, generally we want to constitute 25 to 30% of the prominent facade walls. I just quoted the code here about the masonry facade option. We weren't necessarily trying to use that. So just some statistics here, the installed windows only is 20.4%. If you were to just include the trim, which is bigger than normal, you would be at 28.7. So you would be in that range of 25 to 30, even without the stone base. In fact, there used to be a planter there, so the owner's kind of amenable to the idea. So if you were to take that square footage, then it would bump the overall articulation change to the front facade to 40%. So it was more about percentage of change to the facade than necessarily being a particular material. Because I think, in my opinion, that's kind of the intent. And as a superior solution, it's like that's the intent of that rule, is to not just have big blank walls, but to articulate them. All right, so the next slide. All right, so if we were talking about window muntins, in bold here, multiple pane sashes over single pane sashes are appropriate. So 6/1, I think, meets it prescriptively. And then here's just wanting to show you what the muntins are, and that we have 2 inches, between the windows. And then the next, we have a more detailed, go ahead, Brandon, to the next slide. There you can see, we kind of measured what's there. So you can see the sizes. So above the window is kind of a built up trim. And I think it's 5 5/8 inch. And then down below in that picture to the left, you can see we do have the apron below the sill, and it's overall 5 inches. So the top and the bottom are both taller than the 5 1/4 by 4, which would be just kind of the minimum requirement to meet the manual. So go ahead to the next slide. So overall, with the more elaborate trim, the stone planter at the base of the wall, I believe that our design, or the installed windows, meets, is a superior design solution than just meeting the prescriptive intent of the manual. Do you have questions? I hope you agree. I think, Darren, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm making gestures and talking, no one's hearing me. Any questions for Jeannie and or Brandon from any members of the DRB?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Okay.
So is this house a post and beam poured foundation slab? What sort of construction is it?
you know, I'm not that familiar with this house. It,
The photos don't show foundation binning, so I'm guessing the front might be a slab.
yeah, it used to be a garage, I think,
Okay,
way
so
back in the
it's
day.
probably a slab then at that point in time.
Yeah.
As a home inspector, I absolutely positively despise planter beds. Mainly because they always get moisture against the structure and they cause structural damage. I think it's kind of sad that the previous owner didn't come to us ahead of time, because what they did to the front, I think, is way superior to what it was for the area that it is in town. Personally, I would rather see, instead of a planter bed in front of it, a raised planter bed, just a straight planter bed with some tree or some bushes to be able to break up the building a little bit more. I just know, and I've seen it many, many times over the last 15 years, where an attached raised bed has caused moisture intrusion into the structure with termites and everything else, and it's been a downhill item. So I do think what you see is superior to what it was originally, but I'd love to get rid of the bed and actually have a ground level planting bed with some bushes to be able to break it up more.
I think it's a good comment, John. Jeannie, what do you know about the what do you know about the carport itself? It looked like in your presentation that had shown the 3 views in concert with the plan. There you go. It looks like there were some shingle added to the front gable of that, and some painting of the post and beamwork across that. Is there work maybe that could be done to the wall or the element that seems like the solid wall that is left of the vehicle in the shot, the screen wall, that has as much to do with relating to the facade of the house. And it seems like they could somewhat complement each other or help work with that facade a little bit more. And in one sense, I'm kind of with John, if you're going to create something just for a visual aesthetic that may create a detriment to the future performance of the house, I'd say, well, let's not do that. Let's do something that's more positive and proactive. And so I guess I would ask some questions about the carport, if they looked at maybe painting the posts and beams, or if maybe the solid screen wall between it could start to be shingled or something much like the house, so that it starts to take on some character of the house itself, and maybe you can get a little more street presence.
Jeremy, do you have that picture that you had? Is it something we could put on the screen of the old building? Did it show the old carport? Because what I want to say is, on view 1 here, I do know about the carport because I did work with the previous owners on the carport. I did not work with them on the house. They did that work on their own. And incidentally, it was the planner's inspection of the carport where they noticed the windows on the house. But here you can see how the carport before, that's great. Oh,
This
yeah.
is what it used to look like.
Right, that's what it used to look like. In fact, it used to be within the right of way. So what the previous owners did is we basically took off I don't know what you call that hip thing on the front. And then, had to cut back about half of that first bay of vertical siding there. And then created a gable end with the shingle siding, and then did some of the white painting. So that's the improvement that was made to that, and that was permitted. You can see to the left, with the old windows and the old planter that used to be there and stuff like that. So, so since this, I guess, fence has been added, and then the story is that they wanted more privacy, so they reduced those windows. My guess is way back in the day that those were garage doors. But
Jeannie,
anyway.
This is the front of the house, right? This is how you approach the front door. You walk beside the carport. There's a little pathway there.
Yeah,
And then you, how do you?
then you
where's
jig
the
jog
front-
around and
Where's the
front-
front door of this house?
so if you go to the site plan that we have on the front page,
Mm-hmm.
the front door is, you walk behind, yeah, you follow it all the way back to the very back. I'm sorry, I don't have the arrow, but if you walk along the carport or through the carport along the path
Mm-hmm.
and then down, follow the path and
Got
over,
it.
that's the front door right there.
Right. And that's all the more reason. So since this is the front, you guys have done improvements on the carport. It almost seems like, finishing the facade of the carport a bit more, I think would help with what is the character and the modulation, of the front of the building, leading towards the front door. It is somewhat ambiguous where the front door is. So you're trying to improve a design that was from a different era and, try to bring it into compliance a bit. But I don't know. I guess the facade is so small, in my opinion, speaking of the house itself, and the windows, inclusive of the casing on the windows, would meet the area. I would say that we're so close that I would say I'd be comfortable without even adding the planter. It would have been nice maybe if the sills on those windows were a little bit lower. I think the proportions might be a little nicer on the house, but given what's happening inside the in there, if it's a couple of bedrooms on the end, maybe that wasn't realistic. But my thought would be just looking at improvements to the carport, finish that thought, and then I would be comfortable with it.
Well, I would comment that I tend to agree with Aaron. It almost appears as though we're splitting hairs over window size. Regarding the planter, I would consider that kind of a personal judgment. I would not want to use it as just simply a ruse to try and bring it into code. As designed, it's attractive enough. Planter boxes could be designed to protect the house itself from moisture intrusion. But that is part of the risk to the structure is part of a personal decision apart from the compliance issue, in my opinion. I would also say that the carport itself, when you look at the overall aesthetics of the structure, is almost an eyesore. So when we're looking at the carport in comparison to the facade, to split hairs over the actual size and percentage of the facade that the windows take up is really inconsequential to the total frontal view of the house.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, the carport in its current state wouldn't be something that would be allowed today.
No, but the work that was done on the carport brought it closer into compliance.
Yes, it pushed it further from the
And
street.
it did have a approved variance back in the early 90s to have it located where it is.
Mhm.
So it's not a non-conforming structure anymore. You
Okay.
can see by that garbage can where they pulled it back that it used to stick out further.
Mhm.
But I just would like to say that, yeah, I don't know.
Well, let's see.
I feel
if,
like the focus should be on the windows. The thing was about the percentage, the solid void ratio. And so I just hope that the solution's not kind of too expensive for her. If I like the idea, I thought of it myself about if the window and the trim together, those are like 28%. in, you know, maybe that could be the recommendation to satisfy the violation. And then the planter would be just if she wanted to, or like you said, just put some plants there. But I don't know about, I wish she was here because, you know, having her do some major remodel to the carport seems a little bit out of scale with the problem she inherited.
Mhm. Okay, appreciate the comments, Jeannie. So let's see if we have any other thoughts from Brianne or Amy or Marlene.
No, I when it comes to the actual windows themselves, I think that improvement fits the standards and it's beautiful and it looks good. The planter, I have to agree that I think it's kind of a little bit of a personal decision, whether it's a liability to your, I understand and actually agree personally that they happen to cause a lot of problems, but they are aesthetically pleasing. And for some plants, it's actually helpful. So I feel like that's a personal choice for that. The carport itself, I didn't think was our focus. So I was trying to sort of, I find that carports are often an eyesore, so it's not, so that's a whole different subject. But personally, when it comes to the window thing, I think it's a good improvement.
Okay, Brianne, any thoughts?
I just largely echo what's already been said. I think the windows look with the trim look to be an improvement and seem to be following the intent of the code. And with that justification, I think that's enough to meet my needs. I think the rest of the conversation's been said. So I would agree that I don't know that the carport is a part of the conversation looking at what's before us, and would agree also that the planter is probably unnecessary. So it's I think already been said, a personal choice. So yeah, I don't think I have anything new to add to the conversation.
Okay. And lastly, Marlene.
Yeah, you know, you have an intent that is solid void, which is, you know, you have a rule that says solid void and you can look at it as a percentage, but then, you know, when we look at before and after, well, the after is definitely better than the before, and the proportions of the windows that were there before, which as Darren pointed out, were probably just because they were filling an opening from a garage door. We're not, you know, would have hit the numbers, but I don't think aesthetically they were, you know, what we're looking at is better aesthetically. I'm not in love with the little planter, and, you know, maybe that's just personal, but it seems like just, you know, again, maybe once you plant stuff in it, it's different, but just, you know, sitting there as a 1 foot bit of masonry doesn't really turn the needle for me. I guess what would be, you know, a superior solution would be making the front door more apparent. And actually, I'm glad that Darren asked the question, because I was looking and I was thinking the front door was somehow on the side, on the other side, the side that I could see. And, you know, again, the house was built at a time when, you know, we now do have a requirement that you are supposed to have a door that faces your public right away. Well, this was before then. So I guess what I would rather see than a planter would be landscaping improvements that bring the front door, bring a more welcoming side to, you know, to the public right of way, and, you know, try to minimize the carport. But, you know, I agree with what Larry said about, you know, do we need to split hairs on a percentage? Or can we say that the improvements weren't improvements and they are not, you know, aesthetically offensive for the district? And I guess I would be willing to say that.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments by the DRB? Okay, do any of the DRB members want to propose a motion? John?
Trying to find the notes, man. Hang on. I'd like to propose a motion to be able to accept the design as it stands, with the exception that is up to the applicant to be able to add or not add the planter in the front of it. The design as it stands right now for the main structure is superior than code requires. Hopefully that works.
Okay, do we have a second?
I would second that proposal.
Second.
Okay. Do we have any discussion? The motion has been presented and seconded. Okay, so we will call for the question. All in favor of this motion that was presented by John?
Yes, I.
Aye.
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 Okay, so it's John, it's Larry, Amy was a yes. And Brianne was a yes. So it is unanimous. Okay, so the result of that is the planter box is optional. Okay, so it seems to work as is. I guess as a footnote on this, the percentages that you calculated, Jeannie, showing that the actual window openings of 20.4% versus the 28.7, if you include the casing, demonstrate how small the entire facade is when we can have an almost 9% shift in the percentage just by including the trim. So I think when you do look at those windows, you obviously have to include the casing as a part of the window when you look at it, because it's part of in essence, the window's adornment, so to speak. So I think, in one sense that it, in essence, if you agree with that notion, would meet the intent prescriptively. So I'm pleased with the decision of the DRB on this. Okay, I think that'll do it. So let's see, going back to staff. Jeremy, do you see anything else that we would need to address?
Nothing else on the agenda.
Okay.
So Jeannie, Brandon, thank you very much. I think that's
Thank
probably
you.
good news for you and your client.
They'll be pleased. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And then I guess you can be excused. You can hang around and listen to us just to follow up here a little bit. Thanks again. So for those of us staying on here for just a moment, do you know, Jeremy, if we have anything scheduled for what would be the second meeting in June?
I will defer to Cindy on that one.
No, the June 23rd meeting has been canceled. Well, we don't have any, it shouldn't say it's been canceled, but we don't have any items to bring before you on June 23rd.
Okay. And so then if we continue on as been usual, we haven't had many meetings. So then in August, where we would have to vote on our chair and vice chair, our first meeting would be August 11th, Thursday, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I would presume no matter what, we would have a meeting to get that done. And so I would ask the DRB members, do any of you know of whether or not you will be absent on August 11th? Whether or not we can have we want to have everybody when we take a vote, I would think.
Hang on, I gotta pull my calendar.
I don't know of scheduling conflicts for me, so
None for me.
I'm going to say I'm going to be available.
August 11th, you said?
Yes.
I am available August 11th.
As
Okay.
far as I know, I am too.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. So Cindy, maybe what we can do is be preemptive on this and send out notice to all DRB members that we are going to have our election on August 11th, whether we have a project or not, and make sure that we can get everyone, including Linda, in attendance for that. That would be appreciated.
I will do that. I will do that on Monday. I'll send out that notice.
Okay, so last item would be, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, sorry, can I?
Adjourn.
Sorry,
Carlene got me.
Sorry, I have a for the good of the order. First of
Oh,
all,
I'm sorry.
members. welcome to the new members, and it's nice to see. And secondly, I did notice that the city had put out a request for qualifications to help us review our design review manual. And maybe Jeremy wants to talk a bit about that, and I guess we're not directly involved in that, but maybe something that we will want to keep and, follow along with as citizens.
I do not have the specifics of that. I'll make a note to have Carl DeSimas reach out to the DRB regarding that.
I think we all kind of have an interest in having the right standards for the city, and something that I would have been interested in for a long time. In not just, it's important to have standards, it's important to have the right standards. It seems like the manual's been in place for a while. We see what it does and what it doesn't do, and it's gonna be nice to review it. So I will be watching that as a citizen.
Yeah, I will discuss that with other planning staff.
Great.
Get a response for you all.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? All right, so now I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'm gonna make it. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and it's been seconded, so all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Hi.
And there you go. You've been through your first DRB meeting. It wasn't probably the most fascinating project, but that's generally how we operate. We're somewhat casual, but it also depends on the project and the level of interest from the public. And so sometimes it's a little more exciting.
We've had a few good ones.
We have. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And
you.
if we don't see you before then, we'll see you on August 11th.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank you,
night.
everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
You too.